All right, guys, welcome to Her Take. We are live for the first time.
Yeah.
Anybody nervous?
A little bit.
A little
Excited.
bit. A little bit. So the first thing I'm going to do is ask you to comment, like, and subscribe. It helps us a ton with the algorithm. We've got a lot to cover today. This powerhouse to my right, Tomi Lahren, is here. Welcome to the show.
I'm glad to be here. I know some of you from afar, and some of you from Zoom, and some of you from a long time ago in LA, so I'm excited.
Well, I got to read your long list of accolades here. My God, okay. Best-selling author, Fox News contributor, host of Tomi Lahren is Fearless on Outkick. One of the most recognizable conservative voices in America. Not shabby.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the introduction. It's a better introduction than I got on The Breakfast Club a couple weeks ago. Right out the gate, it was like, "Are you racist?" So that one was better.
Are you racist?
Yeah.
Can
the
you
answer
imagine?
was no, by the way.
I was going to say, like,
yeah.
I am, in fact. Yes. Wow. All right. Well, we're off. We've got a lot to cover today, guys. Black pills, bitch slaps, brawls, and bros. So here are the stories we're covering. Operation Spiderweb seems to have turned the Russia-Ukraine peace talks completely upside down. Then Trump's escalating war on the Ivies. The desperate Dems bet on beards and bros with Operation Sam. Speaking with American men, this is my favorite part, a strategic plan. You need a plan to talk to men. Pathetic. All right, is Trump selling get out of jail free cards? Brigitte clocks Macron, and yes, I know you think you've seen it, but we've got a lot more to say about what we all really think is going on behind the scenes there. The MAHA mess, I'm super pissed about this one. Mistakes in the report, but on the other hand, you did have the head of the FDA just remove COVID shots from the schedule for kids. So that's kind of exciting. And yes, I did bury the lead. Here we go, guys. One big, beautiful breakup. So this is nuts. In the event you've been living under a rock, I'm going to give all of you a little bit of a backstory here. So this seemingly started when Elon took direct aim at Trump, branding his much-hyped big, beautiful bill a pork-filled, disgusting abomination. I appreciate the adjectives. Pork-filled. It's nice. Things escalated from there when Elon called to kill the bill, saying that it will bury American citizens in crushing debt. He went on to say, in November of next year, we fire all politicians who have betrayed the American people. Things weren't looking great, and then yesterday it went nuclear, with Elon tweeting, the reason we haven't seen the Epstein list is because Trump was on it. Trump then implied Elon had Trump derangement syndrome. That was great. You want to play that clip, Nat? Let's see that real quick.
And they love us. And then at some point they miss it so badly, and some of them embrace it, and some of them actually become hostile. I don't know what it is. It's sort of Trump derangement syndrome, I guess they call it. But we have it with others too. They leave, and they wake up in the morning.
Okay, that's good.
Gone,
I think we
world is
got it.
different,
Thank you. We've got a lot to cover here because it keeps going. Elon then says Trump would not have won the election without him. And I think we've left off with Trump saying they might take away Elon's government contracts. Last I heard, they were going to talk. And this is the best part. We were preparing for this morning. And as we were, I was like, all right, look up, when are they talking? And the headline said, right here, right? Trump and Musk to speak on Friday. Today being Friday. When you click on the link, though, it has changed. And where are we now, Nat? Trump is not interested in talking with Elon. Now, my girl Amy called this weeks ago. So, Amy, take us away. What the hell is going on, and how did you see this coming?
So I've been following the big, beautiful bill pretty intently. And like I mentioned on our last show, I am pretty much against these big omnibus bills because generally speaking, they put in a lot of stuff in there that isn't so good, and they hope to divert your attention away from that by putting in things that people do want and things that people do like. The issue when it comes to this bill was it was really dividing a lot of the fiscal hawks because it's contributing massive, massive spending, and it's going to increase the deficit. And in doing so, that is really directly undermining all of the work that Elon was doing at Doge. Now, a lot of Republicans have been outspoken about this. Thomas Massie is one. Rand Paul is also one. And Rand Paul came out recently and he literally said, we cannot codify these Doge cuts unless the president puts through a rescission bill. The Republicans already tried to push it through. 26 Republicans voted against it, so it is now in the hands of the president. and he doesn't seem to be acting. So when I saw these two things playing out simultaneously, I was like, okay, something is going to go down here soon. This is definitely going to be the end of the bromance. But what's interesting to me, and, you know, this is purely, you know, speculative. I'm not saying anything definitively, but when you look at the timeline, it's interesting because before Elon said it was pork-filled, prior to that, what he actually said, I believe it was May 27th, he said, I believe a bill could be big or it could be beautiful, but it could not be both. 3 days later is when he was in the Oval Office, Trump giving him his goodbye speech, Elon's in there with the black eye, and then a couple of days... I'm not saying anything, no. But then,
and looking a little twitchy, to be honest.
And then a couple of days later, now he's come out and he's gone nuclear. So it's just very interesting, the timing of events and the way this has all unfolded. What do you guys think?
Jump ball, who wants this one?
I'm actually with Elon on the fact that this is absolutely unsustainable. We're spending $1 trillion on interest alone. Doesn't that make you cringe?
But what does that have to do with this bill?
Because that's what he's saying. He's saying that this is jacking up our deficits and ballooning our debt.
I don't think it is, though.
That's his
It
it does.
The big
okay, but I thought the only way it does is by offering back the 2017 tax cuts, which they have to do that.
Well, it depends, because basically the tax cuts, I think, on working class people are important to keep. I wish that they would make those permanent, because working class people, I think, help stimulate the economy way more than the rich, who also get a massive tax break and don't really stimulate the economy with it, right? The argument is that they do, but the first round of tax cuts from Trump's 2017 bill prove that it doesn't actually stimulate the economy. A lot of companies who promised that they were going to create new jobs did the opposite. They actually laid people off. Because remember, the fiduciary responsibility for corporations is to provide return on investment to their shareholders. That is their top goal, profit maximization. And so they did corporate stock buybacks. They provided additional dividends for their investors, and it didn't actually help the overall economy. So I actually agree with Elon Musk in what he's saying in regard to our deficit. It is a problem. The Congressional Budget Office, which is nonpartisan, has done analysis on this, and they show that this is actually going to create $3 trillion in additional debt over the next decade. So it is a problem. However, at the same time, I do think that Elon Musk is motivated by something other than what he's saying out front.
Agree. Tomi, I can see you've been ready to go on this one.
Yeah, so again, nobody likes to see these spats between the richest man in the world and the most powerful man in the world. Yeah, it's a reality TV show in the making, right? And it's fun and it's salacious, and the Democrats are loving it, by the way. The left is having a field day with it, which breaks my heart because
I don't love it.
We don't need this.
It's super uncomfortable and unfortunate. But I appreciate what
Imagine
you're saying.
the people who were like in like jail or got like arrested or had legal things from the Tesla incident, and now all the libs are like, oh, you missed the memo. We're actually for Tesla now.
I don't know if you guys saw, but the searches of how to remove a car sticker have skyrocketed. Because you see all the Dems saying, we love Elon now for going
Which
after
is so
Trump.
disingenuous and stupid. But in discussing the EV mandate and the EV, subsidies, listen, I'm sure Elon probably is a little salty about that.
Super pissed.
Enough to go where he went yesterday? I'm not sure. It seemed rather childish. Now, there were some of us in the conservative movement that have been Trump supporters since the very beginning, that have long said, listen, we love what Elon was able to do, especially with liberating Twitter/X. That was a huge help. So yes, do I believe that he won the election for Trump? No. Do I think liberating Twitter went a long way? Absolutely, because it allowed for a marketplace of ideas that conservatives were not really allowed to be in before that. Exposed a lot, that was great. I don't think he won the election. I think his money was helpful, and I think that his sway, especially when on Rogan, was important. His discussion on immigration, I think, was very important. So for him to go where he went, I thought was childish and stupid. The Epstein files, all this, it just seemed like somebody who was throwing mud for the sake of throwing mud. All over an EV mandate, though, that seems...
I think there's more.
Yeah, there's got to be more than just that.
Here's what I want to suggest. So I did a little homework into this. First of all, they did only codify $9 billion of Doge cuts, which is going to piss him off when he wanted to cut $1 trillion. But outside of that, does anybody remember this piece? So Nat, see if you can find that Reuters article for me. When Trump went to the Middle East, he basically handed Sam Altman the keys to the kingdom there.
Oh, that's such a good
so
point.
a consortium led by OpenAI, along with Oracle, NVIDIA, Cisco, SoftBank, and the UAE-based company G42, announced this Stargate UAE project. So this initiative aims to build one of the world's largest AI data centers in Abu Dhabi, positioning the UAE as a significant hub for AI development. Now, long story short, AI, what is it, XAI or Elon's new AI thing is not in the mix. And apparently he called and was like, Trump's never going to allow this. I need to be involved. I don't know where it stands now, but long story short, he was out in the cold on this one.
That's a good point. And you know what? At the Qatar Economic Forum was the first time when he actually said, I'm done with political spending. Right. I don't know if you guys saw that clip. That seems like that's what really initiated all of this. That was a really sad clip, too. That kind of broke my heart and black-pilled me a little seeing that, where he's like, I've done enough at this point, you know?
Jillian, you bring up a brilliant point. I actually hadn't thought about that, because we know there's a simmering feud between Sam Altman and Elon Musk.
Exactly.
They hate each other right now. And Elon was even threatening to sue OpenAI because OpenAI had promised everybody they would be a nonprofit, that they would put the interests of the world before their bottom line, which apparently it isn't the case.
Right.
So that actually, I hadn't thought about that, and that's an angle that we should explore more, because there's a deep animosity between these two men who are vying for dominance in the tech industry.
But it's also, that's stupid to me. That's selfish to me, because if you're Elon Musk and you're saying, I'm doing all this, I'm working as a public servant, because I want to cut government spending and I want to get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse, and I did this because I have a duty to my country. That's what he said over and over again, right? So if you're salty because this big, beautiful bill doesn't cut enough, I get you. If you're salty because the president didn't give you preferential treatment and you thought that you were owed that, then I'm not with you anymore. Because the whole thing that President Trump said from the get-go is, Elon didn't ask me for anything. All right, well, maybe he started asking for things. You don't ask this president. You might be able to do that with other presidents. This president, you don't overstay your welcome, even if you're the richest man in the world. You're not going to bully Donald J. Trump.
Well, I definitely... Oh, sorry. Go ahead, sweetheart.
I just wanted to say, the thing that bothers me about this the most is, while Elon Musk makes good points about this bill adding to the deficit, I do agree with Tomi in that it's not really the motivating factor in why he's speaking out. And it's frustrating because what he is speaking out about is a legitimate concern, right? So future generations are honestly screwed in this country, because if we're already spending more on servicing our debt than we do on our defense, on the Pentagon, that's insane. $1 trillion a year already, and we're just adding more to the debt. So I'm worried about that, and it sucks that it's just used as like a talking point by people, whether it's a powerful billionaire or a politician, but they're never really serious about doing something about the debt. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, everyone is operating under the philosophy of I'll be gone and you'll be gone. Like, we're not going to be around to face the consequences, but our generation will be. So I'm actually glad that this is back in the conversation. But we absolutely must take it more seriously. But I do want to say, echoing your point, Tomi, this shows that Trump can't be bought. Okay, this guy who spent 200.
I'm happy about that.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I was shocked because this is pretty intense. Like, we didn't really get into what he rolled back on the EV subsidies, but it is crushing to Tesla. Actually, I wanted to just give you some details on it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, sweetheart.
Well, I was just gonna say, if $269 million can't buy Trump, then nothing will. So
I was going to say, so when was that EV mandate, or what Trump said, taking away the funding? When was that announced? What's the timeline on that?
It's in the bill. That's all I know for sure. And here's what it does. So basically, people who buy EVs get a tax credit of $7,500. That's a heck of a lot of money. I mean, a new one. Okay, then he repealed EV manufacturing incentives. So the long story short is, it costs more for Elon to make a Tesla, and other countries like China heavily subsidize EVs, so it makes it more difficult for him to be competitive. It has cuts to green energy subsidies. So Solar City is part of Tesla, right? So they're going to get hammered as well. Then there are regulatory rollbacks. So it essentially weakens the EPA's authority to set strict emission standards, which slows the push of EV vehicles. It essentially crushes Tesla.
And oh well, because we were going listen, this country is not about Tesla. The green,
I agree. This country shouldn't be about fossil fuel companies either, and we subsidize them. Those subsidies are still included in that bill, and they should get rid of that. If they're going to I think there is a lot of pork barrel spending in that bill. And all these different members of Congress, in order to get them to vote yes on the bill, they had to secure some sort of, pork barrel spending for their state. And that's how this sausage is made. That's where the waste comes in.
Anna, you and I disagree on some things, but I gotta say, I applaud you on that.
Thank you.
I feel deeply about this. I'm sorry. I have finally been free to vocalize my conservative views, but I am so strong. I will never budge on the environment because we are suffocating ourselves to death. I'm sorry if that offends anybody. Well, but we need to stop subsidizing the oil companies.
Okay, it doesn't offend me, but here's the dirty little reality nobody wants to talk about, right? The Green New scam was it was a giveaway, and Trump says we're not doing giveaways anymore. And here's something that President Trump has said before. Listen, if you have an EV and you love driving your EV, that's fantastic. Right. I come from a place where you don't have charging stations. I'm from South Dakota. Okay, best of luck to you if you're a rancher or a farmer trying to get along on an EV. So what President Trump has said before, which is the reality of the situation that doesn't make people feel nice, is not everybody wants a frickin' EV. So we're not going to be subsidizing the EVs anymore. People do want gas-powered vehicles because guess what? They work.
I agree with that. I'm just saying, can we please stop subsidizing ExxonMobil? Please? I mean, this is a giant...
I would agree.
I'm going to lightly agree with you on that, but again, you're going to find more support for, and I don't want to say subsidizing, because I agree cuts can be made, right? But you're going to find more agreement on, okay, we need fossil fuels. I know everybody likes to have this pie in the sky idea that we're going to fly on unicorn dust, but that's not the reality.
I think we need nuclear, to be honest.
2 minutes to litigate this, and then we're going to move on, and I also want to end with who wins. So process that. You got 2 minutes to fight it out.
I'm just saying, I actually agree with that. We need all the above strategy, but we also need to provide, incentives for EVs. And can we just stop?
Yeah, we tried that, and it didn't work because people didn't want the damn things.
But there are a lot of people who did actually.
Yeah, but a lot of people don't. So maybe in places...
But I am sympathetic to your view that in places like South Dakota where there aren't charging stations, we should allow people to have these, gas-powered. I'm just saying that we need to do everything we can to wean ourselves off of these planet-destroying fossil fuels. And though... this is just something that I can't, because this is the truth. Yeah. In our generation, we are literally dying. I know this sounds drastic.
Listen, I get it from Lindy, a health perspective in particular.
And I overall agree with you.
A bridge.
Lindy.
What about a bridge, Tommy? In other words, I get where we're at now, but looking towards the future.
Nuclear. We need nuclear.
Yes.
We need nuclear.
Yes.
We need nuclear.
Let's do that. Listen, we should have an energy source that's reliable that people actually want, right? But if you have to subsidize EVs to keep them afloat,
that's fair.
Then we've got a problem.
You're not
incentives. Incentives, but we tried that, right?
Just let the market
My state of Tennessee was like, we're going to incentivize Ford to build this EV plant, whatever. People don't want them. There are some people that want them. I'll tell you who wants an EV, at least in places like Tennessee and South Dakota and elsewhere. It's people who can afford to have a car that actually works all the time.
Do you really think that a tax cut is a big enough incentive for people to get like a Tesla over their preferred vehicle anyways?
I don't think it really is. People that drive Teslas and Cybertrucks, they're all over my neighborhood, and guess what else they have in the garage? They have a Porsche.
Regular cars.
And they got a G-Wagon, and they got everything else.
That's fair.
And they have a home where they can install a charging station. Let's not forget about all the people who live in cities like Los Angeles. They live in buildings, and it's not as easy as just like setting up a charging station.
It really isn't. It's a huge pain in the ass.
Really quick, before we move on, I just want to ask you guys, so genuinely, do you think that this spat isn't about Elon being frustrated with the spending? It's not because he's frustrated that it is literally undermining all the work he did with Doge, but you instead think it's about the EV thing, or do you think it's a combination?
I don't think
probably
it's
a combination, but more his self-interest, in my opinion.
Also, if you got an issue, also go to Speaker Johnson. He's not taking any shots at him, right? He's going directly for Trump about the Epstein stuff, which tells me that this is petty. This is not just about spending. If it's just about spending, talk about the spending. If it's you being a child because you didn't get your way, then you're going to bring up the Epstein and the...
They should release the files, though, by the way, right?
Blair White made an excellent point on X as well, and actually said, like, well, then why did you, if you think that he's this pedophile...
I know, why did you
let your kid be around him as well? He was carrying around little baby X on his shoulders.
I completely forgot to bring that up. All right, last thought, and then we're moving on.
Extremely petty and hurtful. This is someone that Trump invited to be a part of the Christmas family photo, whom he invited down to Mar-a-Lago as one of his closest confidants, and then he stabs him in the, actually not even in the back, in the front. it's just not a good, decent thing to
Well,
do.
I also feel for Elon as well, though, because nobody would codify his cuts. I mean, it's...
Last thoughts.
Sorry.
Okay, this is unfortunate.
It
will
is.
continue to unfold. Moving on. Peace talks, Russia and Ukraine. Disaster, as far as I can tell, happened this week in Istanbul. The two countries did agree to a major prison swap, but they failed to make any progress towards a ceasefire. Last we heard, I believe, Anna's going to keep us fully up to date here, Trump took to Truth Social to tell America about his latest call with Putin. So, Anna, break this mess down for me, please.
Well, honestly, it really does appear as though President Donald Trump has kind of given up on securing a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. And look, it's something that he kind of promised when he was campaigning. I know politicians promise the moon and the stars when they campaign, but he kept repeating something over and over again. If you don't remember what it was, take a look at this.
If I were president, and I say this, I will end that war in one day. It'll take 24 hours. I know Zelensky well. I know Putin well. I would get that ended in a period of...
You can break that deal.
100%. It would be easy. That deal would be easy. A lot of it has to do with the money. A lot of it has to do with the military, that we're giving. But I would get that deal done with...
So, he kept saying, it'll be easy, I can get that deal done. But it's not so easy because, quite frankly, Vladimir Putin and Russia is winning this war. They're taking hold of more and more Ukrainian territory. Trump did go in a completely different direction just recently when he was having this joint press conference with the German chancellor. And here's what he had to say. It's getting a lot of negative attention. Take a look.
Sometimes, and this is me speaking maybe in a negative sense, but sometimes you see two young children fighting like crazy. They hate each other and they're fighting in a park. And you try and pull them apart. They don't want to be pulled. Sometimes you're better off letting them fight for a while and then pulling them apart. And I gave that an...
So they do plan on fighting more. In fact, Russia had announced that they intended to retaliate against Ukraine for something known as Operation Spider's Web. And honestly, this clandestine military attack by Ukraine was both genius, but also a little terrifying because they used, like the supply chain, the commercial supply chain, in order to smuggle drones in deep into Russia to attack their military assets specifically, including their, bomber planes. So we have some details on that. Let's take a quick look.
Drone flying out of a truck in southeastern Siberia, 2,700 miles from the front line, targeting Putin's warplanes deep in the heart of Russian territory. Ukrainian officials said it was part of a clandestine attack that saw 4 military airports hit, destroying more than 40 warplanes, in the biggest blow of the war against Moscow's long-range bomber fleet.
Okay, so now Ukraine claims that this attack destroyed, they used these drones. They apparently destroyed these Russian warplanes, including the ones that deliver nuclear weapons. They claim they destroyed like 40 planes. However, so far it's been confirmed that about 10 planes were destroyed in Russia. And this cost Russia $7 billion. And Ukraine also claimed, by the way, that their operation, which they've dubbed Spider's Web, destroyed 34% of Russia's strategic cruise missile carriers. As you can imagine, Vladimir Putin not happy about that. And if you do this in the middle of a peace deal, or peace negotiations, I should say, it's going to serve as a disincentive for Putin. And he's already begun the retaliation. Take a look at this.
Tonight, a ferocious Russian assault following Ukraine's coordinated drone strikes deep inside Russia. Russia now blasting residential high-rises in Ukraine's second-largest city of Kharkiv and destroying this government building in Kherson. The barrage leaving more than 40 people dead or wounded across Ukraine. And Ukraine is now bracing for even more, what could be a much larger Russian attack at any moment.
So I'm not surprised that this is how Vladimir Putin has responded to Ukraine's successful attack. I'll just say one more thing. It's notable that Ukraine specifically targeted Russia's military assets, whereas Russia is bombing residential buildings and government buildings as well. So,
can I say one thing first, and then because I want you guys to attack me on this one, simply because I did think that Trump was going to be able to resolve this pretty easily. I did think that this was like a money laundering operation to siphon off money from taxpayers, give it to the military-industrial complex to drop bombs. We then go in there like heroes, take their minerals. You know, the World Bank is forcing them to lease out their farmland, the breadbasket, which is like the most valuable farmland in the world outside of Iowa. And all of a sudden, you've got like Cargill and Monsanto in there farming their GEO crops. And I just thought this was all this corrupt globalist plan. There were off-ramps, we didn't take them. And I now am looking at this going, oh my God, I was so wrong. Putin is absolutely as crazy as it gets. He is fully a vile monster. Are we going to need to arm Ukraine to hold this guy at bay? Like, I've now gotten all the way back to where we started. So, so go.
I'll just say this. Both things are true. Okay, so Russia is in the wrong. They invaded a sovereign country.
Right.
But, you know, the military-industrial complex would never miss an opportunity to make money. You know what I'm saying?
But he's not stopping.
Well, especially after now that Afghanistan is essentially over, they need a new cash cow.
Right.
And that's why you have all these defense contractors hovering around Congress like a pack of vultures, trying to keep this war going. And so I think you're actually right on both counts. People want this war to go on. They love the forever wars. And I'm still have a very jaundiced view of Zelensky because I still think that he is not administrating the funds that we so generously gave him.
We need somebody to give him funds, though. I watched him say to Lex Fridman, "You guys didn't give me money. You gave me weapons."
Right.
Okay, I can feel the both. I'm going to go Tommy, then I'm going Amy. Go.
We're also propping up their government and their civil servants. So he might have said, you didn't give me money personally. Okay, I still disagree with that. I would love to see the Doge audit of Ukraine, right? But yes, we're propping up their civil servants and their programs in Ukraine, which a lot of people have had enough with. President Trump, the only person that I believe, at least from a leader's standpoint, that really does want to see the killing end is President Trump. I believe that he wanted to get a minerals deal done because I believe he wanted the United States to have a stake in Ukraine without going and winning a war for Ukraine, plunging us into potentially a World War III. Nobody wanted that. And to his point about I could solve this in 24 hours, okay, that was an exaggeration. However, if President Trump had been president...
That's extraordinary hyperbole.
Well, I will tell you this, though. If President Trump were president, when, as Joe Biden said, they might make a small incursion, I don't think it would have ever happened. And if the incursion would have happened, I think it would have been swatted down so quickly that it never would have metastasized to this level. President Trump was given a bag of crap by the former president or whoever was running the former president. And now he is stepping back saying, listen, I cannot solve this for you right now. I have tried, but the two parties are going to have to figure it out. And maybe we're going to have to let them figure it out before we step back in. And that's where he is.
Can I just really quick, an observation that I found particularly interesting, they talked about this on the PBD podcast, is like, obviously Ukraine, they're kind of losing this war right now. The sentiment from the Ukrainian people, they do not want to antagonize Putin more. So who empowered Zelensky to feel so confident that he can go and do what he just did? And what they were speculating on the PBD podcast, could there be somebody at home? Could there be somebody in the U.S. who's saying, if you go and do that, then we'll have your back?
Let me make the argument for it real quick. The argument that I've heard is deterrent. So it's like, and Russia, by the way, don't think you're immune. You better show up to these negotiations because look how we can hit you. That was the excuse.
So Ukraine is arguing, we didn't use American weapons. We used these little drones. And as a result, we didn't need to consult with the United States. The United States says they weren't consulted with. I don't know if I believe that because, to be quite frank, the U.S. government has an interest in denying their involvement, specifically because you're kind of playing with fire. You're using commercial supply chains to smuggle like drones into a country. That's terrifying because that could happen anywhere in the world.
Right.
And on top of that, we can't forget about the fact that we're dealing with a nuclear power, and that's Russia. At the same time, though, I think that attacking Russia's military assets as effectively as Ukraine did sent a message to Russia that, hey, you winning this war isn't necessarily inevitable. The other thing that I'll just quickly say is, look, I don't know whether or not Russia would have invaded Ukraine if Trump were president as opposed to Biden. But I will say this. In the beginning of this war, Russia was backed into a corner. Russia was losing.
I saw
However, the
initially.
United States and UK discouraged Zelensky from entering peace negotiations because the US and the UK had an interest in essentially depleting Russia's military capability. That was a big mistake.
Anna, I bought that entirely. I was the whole, like, we provoked it, I bought into it, but Putin doesn't care.
He doesn't.
He doesn't care about being isolated. He doesn't care about sanctions. He doesn't even care about, like, secondary sanctions and tariffs, going after the countries that do business with them. Nobody cares. So there's now no deterrent, and Trump's already on to Iran. So in that conversation, supposedly it's like, hey, I don't want Iran to get a nuclear weapon, and Putin's like, yeah, I got you, wink, wink. So what's going to happen then? Is this done, and Ukraine is going to be flattened, and that's the end of the story?
Going back to what Amy just said about Zelensky, I think it's extremely rich for him to parade himself as some, like, emblem of democracy, and he halted elections in his country. Yeah, I get that there's a war going on, but there's no democracy in his country right now. He's just going to serve as supreme leader.
But
So he didn't
is this
decide
a
that-
foregone conclusion? That is what I am asking you guys.
I have no idea.
Are we out?
I mean, it doesn't look good for Ukraine. But just to respond to what Lindy just said, I can understand feeling that way about what's currently going on in Ukraine and the fact that they haven't had elections. But Zelensky unilaterally can't even make that decision because Congress in Ukraine passed a law indicating that at wartime, they have to pause all elections because they're at war. You get what I'm saying?
Did they pass that law under his, jurisdiction and encouragement?
I mean, I don't
Probably,
know. I don't
right?
know,
Yeah,
but
like
it's
they
the
wouldn't do
law.
that.
Well, here's my thing on that, and I don't know. But why does he have so much time to go on podcasts and go to
Exactly.
Hollywood
And do Vogue covers with his
prance
wife?
around? That to me is what really rubs me and a lot of the American people the wrong way. That's what's keeping a lot of people like myself, who maybe are more isolationist, America First people, when you see this little clown traipsing all over, doing Vogue cover shoots, you see him going on podcasts, but you're like, but he said on the podcast, listen.
Okay, but Putin did some podcasts too. He did Tucker.
Listen.
Okay, all right,
The difference
touche.
between Zelensky walking around wanting to be hailed at the Academy
see.
Awards and then all this stuff.
see
He
it.
wants to be, he is a celebrity. That's how he started. He wants to continue to be a celebrity. So it's very hard for Americans who are struggling to be like, let's give more to Ukraine. Let's win this war for them. When you have a leader that looks like that and acts like that.
So is that the answer then? Is we just back out?
And someone who
we don't support
refuses-
Ukraine anymore because that will be the end of Ukraine at this point. There's no peace deal to be had if we don't give weapons. We know where it's going. End of story.
I mean,
and then on to Iran.
the way that
The
he
European
walks-
allies are still going to support Ukraine. Obviously, if the U.S. decides to drop out
Without
of
us?
supporting Ukraine, I don't know if Ukraine's going to be able to make it.
Who
But
is their biggest supporter
Macron.
funder? Is it Germany?
Macron,
Is the,
France,
is the top
Germany,
country,
UK,
and then the U.S.?
I believe Poland is Poland really did ramp up their military spending, especially for NATO, in order to be able to defend themselves, of course. But they also want to support Ukraine because it's not just about Ukraine. If Putin is emboldened after taking complete control of Ukraine, he's probably going to move on to the next country.
Well, it's not just
insane.
Putin, though. You
It's
know
a
what
pretty
other
big decision
country
you're making to let it go.
You know what other country is watching this with like eyes of an eagle? It's China, because they are going to decide what they're going to do with Taiwan.
They're gonna invade
based
Taiwan.
on America's reaction towards Ukraine.
100%.
And based on Trump's rhetoric on Taiwan, he doesn't seem like he's going to intervene either. So
Trump
China's
has done
getting all
no
of it.
sanctions. He's decided not to, arguably because he's trying to get a grip on Iran, which is a whole separate show unto itself. But personally, I would let Israel go in and deal with them. They're chanting death to America. They're not going to enter into some cute little agreement, in my opinion. But
As long as the
I
US
think
stays out of it,
consequences
fine.
You say that, but then what happens? But all right, I guess
Question,
we
really
won't
quick. Has anybody checked to see if there's any more like covert, sneaky funding stacked into the big, beautiful bill? Because remember, they tried to put that into the bipartisan border bill.
Oh, girl, there is some additional money for defense, right? So hundreds of billions of additional dollars, and that's going to be on top of the National Defense Authorization Act, which they pass every year with no debate.
Right.
And it's quickly approaching $1 trillion a year.
And you know what Department of Government fails their audit every single year? Every single year without fail. It's the Pentagon.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're not solving this one today, but much more to come on it, I'm sure. Next up, Trump's war on the Ivies. Not only is he proposing to strip their billions in federal funding, slash their tax breaks, reroute the money to trade schools, He's calling out foreign donations, legacy admissions, and accusing them of being elitist, corrupt, anti-Semitic, and un-American. So as far as I can tell, the latest was Rubio conducting a review of student visas. Can we see that headline, Nat? Okay, so wrong one, kiddo. Don't worry, we'll get to it in a minute. We'll get to it in a second. There it is. All right, Trump escalates higher ed fight with a review of student visas. Secretary Rubio orders U.S. embassies worldwide to stop scheduling interviews for student visas as the Trump administration weighs stricter vetting of applicants via social media profile. So this is getting kind of intense.
Social media?
I know, but I'm going to let Lindy has a lot to say here, and we'll get into that.
Actually, one quick thing about the social media thing. I'm with Marco Rubio on this. If you came in, if you got a visa under the false premise that you were just going to study and contribute to our economy, and then suddenly you participate in these pro-Palestine or pro-Hamas protests, then you definitely got that visa falsely. I don't think you should be here. So yeah, I'm with Marco Rubio on that. But going back to our main event, which is the war against Ivies that Trump is engaged in right now, 25% of Harvard student body is foreign. And I have a problem with that. This is the nation's most, actually, I'm very disgruntled to say, it is the nation's most prestigious university. We should be funneling our resources towards Americans instead of funding these students who then go home to their home countries and never to be seen again. Why are we doing that? However, I do have a nuanced perspective on this because
wow.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
But this
I'm
is
shocked.
it. I don't think we should be cutting funding for cancer research, for multiple sclerosis, or these really innovative projects. A lot of these universities, these elite universities, actually yielded some of the most extraordinary innovations we've seen today, like GPS, like radar. All of these things came out of just like ordinary general scientific research. Why are we cutting that? Let's cut the stupid gender ideology studies that we don't need. Let's cut that instead.
The angle on that one, and I'm playing devil's advocate here because GPS is an irrefutable monster accomplishment. However, in my line of work, Harvard is the one that kind of came out and said, like, fat causes heart disease, not sugar. And it's because they were captured by these government dollars and in private industry and buying off the research. This is not exclusive to Ivies. As we know, it is a much bigger problem, conflicted research with the NIH, our health agencies, so on and so forth. But the argument for this would be, on the other side, well, all of this money is just going to private corporations, like pharmaceutical companies. Now, clearly, you've listed some examples that are not that.
Yeah, well, I think the vast majority of this funding is actually going to just solitary scientists in the lab, toiling away day in, day night. I know because my father was one of them. He was at Harvard Medical School. He worked at Brigham and Women's, and I know he worked in renal research, and he was just paid close to nothing to do it. Like, he was making $70,000
That was also
a year.
then.
That's such
I think
important
things have
then.
changed.
That's a good point.
The GPS stuff, the actual advancements, to my knowledge, when asked, Harvard has really been unable to show hard, tangible things that they've done with government money that have been substantial.
Oh, I have some interesting ones. Nat, do you have the lizard video? So I saw a video of this girl. She is studying medicine and also like something for NASA as well. And they took away her funding. She was devastated. I really felt for her. But when you look into the way they are mismanaging these funds, man, these higher level institutions need to also have a higher level of accountability.
That is true.
And there needs to be some type of deterrent from them doing this in the future. Guys, this is actually funding that Harvard received to study the way that lizards respond in hurricanes.
Yeah, let's not do that.
Play that for just 1 second.
Look at that little lizard.
This,
having the time of his life.
they are blowing them with leaf blowers to determine how they respond in hurricanes. This is where some of the government money is going when they're funding these elite institutions.
But there's
what the hell?
gem. I know.
I know, but I did research. I was like,
Beautifully
okay.
done. Well done, Amy.
I know it looks ridiculous. I get that, right? But when it comes to scientific research, there's always a reason why they're doing this. They're not just like messing around. They're like, whoa, let's see what this cute little lizard's gonna look like if we do a leaf blower. It's like,
What about the grants
oftentimes
for gender diverse dolphin emotional support research? Do you think that one?
dolphin emotional
Yes,
support
gender
research?
diverse dolphin emotional support research. Do you think
so
that
that
one
stuff
has
we
some
do not-
validity?
yeah.
Well, I
let's
want to
not.
understand like what the point of that research is, right? Like
that would be difficult to discern from the
Yeah.
name. It's like,
Right.
what does that do?
But look, overall, sorry, Tommy, let me just say,
You're next.
I agree with you, Lindy. Like, first of all, I didn't know your father did renal research. My mother had a kidney transplant. That's such an important line of like research to do. So many Americans need kidney transplants. So thank you to your father for toiling away and doing that. Really important work. So look, I agree with Lindy. I think that the federal funding towards scientific research is important. I'm okay with having a little more oversight to ensure that that money isn't mismanaged. My biggest issue, though, is the reason why Harvard is being threatened in getting its federal grants taken away. And I hate this conflation. I hate that there's like the bad actors who are anti-Semites and say disgusting, horrific things, okay? I am not defending them at all. I wish that those people were taken care of, but I don't like the fact that there isn't this scalpel approach and peaceful people who are protesting because they have issues with what's going on right now in the Middle East get grouped in or lumped in
Talking
with
about
them.
the student visa piece?
Yeah, the student visa piece. Yeah, and I don't like the surveillance state. So if these students have a history online of being critical of our government, we've never heard about that being an issue. But because they're critical of a foreign government, we're going to ban them from being in the country? That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, and it's a slippery slope. I think we talked about this in our very first episode. This is a slippery slope because if we're going to try to control speech for that one agenda, then who's to say that would not be used against us for regular normal beliefs? Like the way that could be weaponized is
I'm
scary.
anti this one, but go ahead.
And here's my problem with this. We're talking about foreign students as if they're American citizens, and there is a difference. And most Americans would agree with me on that. You don't get to come to this country as a visitor and then say, well, I have free speech to say death to Jews, death to America. I'm sorry.
I'm with you.
And the way the president is attacking this is this, and the Department of Education. You will not deal with your issue, Harvard. We've given you an opportunity to deal with your issue. You're not dealing with it. So what can we do to protect these Jewish students and protect our country, because we're a breeding ground at your institutions for anti-Semitism and hate? What can we do? All we can do is take your money away. Now, I can guarantee you, if they were discriminating against any other group, they would be troops sent in. If they were saying, you know what, we decided we don't like black students and we're going to rally to keep black students out of their classrooms, they would send troops in to end it.
Everybody would be expelled.
But no, because it's anti-Semitism and it's anti-American. It's like, well, that's free speech. You don't get to come to our country and destroy our country from within, and then now we have to give you a pass and chance to and benefit of the doubt. If you have on your social media profile, globalize the Antifada, I'm sorry, go to another country with your shit.
Like, if you hate us so much, please don't even come.
Can I
just
give you a
stay
little
out.
But
more
don't
to think
conflate the
about?
U.S. with Israel, because I mean
They're
there
not
have been
just
student
anti-Israel.
there
They're
have
anti-Jewish.
been there have been
Yeah.
student protests, including foreign students who are here on visa, protesting wars on campuses that the United States is involved in. They've been critical of the United States. This has never been an issue. By the way, Supreme Court has ruled on this over and over again. There is precedent for this. Anyone who's in the country, including green card holders, including visa holders, they're all protected by our Constitution, including our First Amendment. If you don't like that, take it up with the Supreme
But this
Court.
is different. They're saying now, though, fair enough. You got in here, you slipped in under the radar. By the way, Mahmoud Khalil did not disclose, apparently, that he was associated with a pro-Hamas group. It ended up coming out, a group that the Biden administration had labeled pro-Hamas, and it came out that he never disclosed that. So clearly this guy does not have the best intentions for everybody who thinks so. And I got educated on that one by Batya Ungar Sargon, who ripped me a new one and was like, oh, but did you know? And I was like, I actually did not know. So thank you for that, Batya. So my point being, or Tommy's point, if I could elaborate on your point, is that these guys are not coming in here to protest war. If you're looking at their social and it's death to America and it's bin Laden's letter, it's like, you're not a citizen.
Exactly.
If you're in here talking about it, okay, you're lucky. But we don't need to add flames to those fires. You know, so get the F out of here.
Think
Don't
of it
come
this way.
in.
If you were just a person and this is your home, would you invite in someone who hated you and, you know, give them the best opportunities and treat them with tender
There's
loving care?
more
Like,
to
would
this,
you actually
though.
do that? I do want to mention, this is, you know why the foreign student issue is so deeply entrenched? it always goes back to the almighty dollar.
Yes,
because
that's
you know
true.
who is not entitled to financial aid? It's international students. So all these foreign students are paying full tuition to attend Harvard, to attend these Ivies, and it's an extraordinary income stream for these Ivy League schools.
That's very true. That is very true.
You deal with your anti-Semitism problem, or if you don't, you're going to get your funding cut because the taxpayers are not going to subsidize it. And a great solution for those that are not looking to go one of these Ivy League training camps for terrorism and anti-Semitism, go to an SEC school, because I tell you what, you're not going to be indoctrinated with this crap to this extent. The people have more fun, they're better looking, the sports are better, and your quality of life will be better. Go to an SEC school.
I want to just give you guys one more thing. Hold on, Amy. I want to tell you one more thing to think about here. First of all, these Ivies are also getting hundreds of millions of dollars from foreign governments.
That is true.
Like Qatar and Saudi Arabia and Russian oligarchs. So this is not, there is a history here of very controversial donations from Saudi Arabia, China, Russia, Latin America. And in case anybody is not aware of this, members of the Bin Laden family went to Harvard. Xi Jinping's daughter went to Harvard.
Right.
So I get, and I know where you're coming from, and you're like, but they just don't want to see people die, and they're allowed to say so, and this is a First Amendment thing. This is far deeper, in my opinion. There is a rot in there ideologically that has been funded for years.
Yep. Also, so let me put it in a different context, because I'm curious what you ladies would think about this. Let's say there's a big protest that erupts on Harvard's campus, and it's white South Africans who are engaging in a racist protest against black people.
Should never be allowed.
So you would want to deport them too?
Yes.
Yes. If you're not a citizen, absolutely.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Because we don't see things on the conservative side through the lens of race or all.
Well,
it
does
matter.
feel like there's a bit of a double standard when it comes to the way conservatives have responded to, protests involving, let's say, white men who want to have like a white power group on campus. Like, I'm just making something up, but there isn't like this effort to like get rid of people.
So here's my question. Are we talking about Americans? Or are we talking about foreign nationals? Because that's a distinction I would make.
Right.
I agree with you. The Supreme Court has decided on this, even if you want to go out and burn the flag, whatever, if you're an American citizen. But Secretary Rubio's point that I think has been well made is, listen, if you are a foreign national, you are a guest in this country, and I have every right to look at your visa and revoke it.
But they did squash pro-Palestinian protests overall, and the vast majority of students involved in that were American citizens. They squashed it, completely squashed it.
When you start taking over buildings and you globalize the
I don't agree.
intifada.
Look, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with making Jewish students uncomfortable or blocking them from being able to go to the library or to class. Those students who did that should be held accountable for it. But the majority of students weren't doing that. And so, look, my big concern here, okay, is that there is a double standard, and because of the fact that these protests offended the sensitivities of Bibi Netanyahu and the Israeli government, in fact, he gave a speech about that and essentially condemned American citizens who were engaged in those protests. That's the reason why there's like this harsh response to these students, and I don't agree with that.
I don't see that. I see this as a much bigger problem of a rot that is being funded by people or countries that are against us, seeding these ideologies that are anti-American. It does happen to be playing out in this particular instance with Jewish students. But if these kids are going to protest children dying in Gaza, I don't think anybody would be against that. It's like, I would be if it's peaceful. Right. That's
yeah,
what they're
most
doing.
of them, that's what they're doing.
Well,
Most of them.
Question that most of them couldn't find Gaza on a map. Most of these people are imbeciles.
Yeah, from the river to the sea. Like, what do you think happened?
Quick question, guys. When it comes to the social media requirements, do we know what specifically they're looking for? When
That's a
they're
good
looking at someone's
question.
social
Criticism
media
of Israel, that's what they're looking
whether
for.
or not they can leave.
That's what they're looking for.
But what did you say, sorry?
Criticism of Israel, that's what they're looking for. That's what this is about.
So to your point then, you're saying...
We do. They did not say we are looking for criticism of Israel. If you post Bin Laden's letter, then it's like, uh-oh, I don't know about that.
Wait,
if you're
hold
posting
on.
death to America,
Okay.
if you're in the group in Iran jumping up and down, death to America, no thanks. I would look for that.
We're not accepting Iranian students, so that's not even an issue, but okay.
We're accepting Russian students. We're accepting Xi Jinping's kid. Like, where's the line?
Bin
Is Iran
Laden's
the line?
letter.
I didn't know that.
Hold on. Bin Laden's letter is a historical document. I don't agree with it, obviously, but really, we're going to censor
I would
Bin
not
Laden
want
letter?
that kid going to an Ivy here. I'm sorry. If you're posting Bin Laden's letter as though it
Wait,
was
the
gospel,
architect
I don't think we need
behind
you here.
9/11, I don't think, I absolutely agree with you. I don't think that you know, visas are a privilege. They're not a right. You're not entitled to come to the most amazing country in history, okay? We didn't save a spot for you. You have to earn it, thank you very much. And can we also talk about the extreme indoctrination on these liberal leftist Ivy colleges? It took me a decade to come out of it. You are not allowed to be a conservative if you go to an Ivy League school. You're just not allowed to be.
Well, you'll be in a minority for sure. As a
I
conservative.
feel like it's so easy to become propagandized there. I mean, you've literally, it's proven, wasn't George Soros literally funding these things out there?
My alma mater, Princeton, and I have to say, and I'm calling them out now, there's a contingency in my class right now trying to remove me and asking about bylaws and the Constitution because I am now an open conservative.
Wow.
There is a freedom of speech
Remove
issue.
you from what, though? I'm sorry.
I'm president.
Currently?
Yes.
I did not know that.
They're trying to do a hostile takeover?
They are, and my term is not up yet. And I'm still gonna run in 2027. I'm gonna run again. And you cannot take my freedom of speech away from me. You know, this is just ridiculous. They are so extreme leftists that they've gone to like, they're brainwashing us, you know?
So to put a button on it, go to an SEC school where people are well-adjusted,
happier then.
socially capable, they look better, you'll have more fun. You see these people rushing Alabama sororities, they're having more fun than the people out there that are chanting from the river to the sea, unbathed with septum piercings.
I actually agree with that because I found myself in mental health services on more than one occasion while I was on campus.
Okay, hold on. That was a great button. Thank you, Tomi. Glad to have you here. All right. Moving on. Pardons under fire. The backlash is growing over Trump's latest round of pardons. Among those granted clemency, the Grizzlies, reality TV stars convicted of tax fraud, a disgraced chef found guilty of corruption, abuse of power, a New York tax cheat convicted of orchestrating tax evasion schemes, and the long story short is people are pissed. All right, Anna, you.
Yes. So, look, pardons are an important power that the President of the United States has. There's been some questions, though, in regard to who President Donald Trump chooses to pardon. So let's kind of go through some of the big names here, right? So take a look at this graphic. This is a graphic courtesy of CBS News. And among those who Trump did pardon are Republican politicians convicted of tax evasion, like former Congressman Michael Grimm of New York. Then you also have reality show couple Todd and Julie Chrisley, as you mentioned, Jillian. They were convicted of fraud. Their daughter spoke at the Republican National Convention. So Trump likes to reward loyalty. He likes to reward his supporters. Then there's Sheriff Scott Jenkins. And this really bothered me. Like, this one bothered me the most. This guy was literally caught on camera accepting bribes in return for deputy credentials for civilians. Okay, you need to earn those credentials, but he was essentially selling them illegally. So he got a pardon the day before he was supposed to report to prison for a 10-year sentence. Jenkins was pardoned on the day that he was supposed to go in and serve that sentence. So, like, these issues, I can understand why people are upset about it. Then there was this Republican politician, Michelle Fiore from Nevada, who was convicted of doing something pretty grotesque and should not have been let off easy. Here's what she did. Take a look.
Ahead of her sentencing, Fiore expressed gratitude to Trump and claimed a decade-long conspiracy against her. The White House confirmed Fiore had been pardoned, but did not comment on the president's decision. The pardon, issued after Fiore lost a bid for a new trial, follows an FBI investigation into her campaign spending. The Nevada Democratic Party condemned the pardon, describing it as reckless and a slap in the face to law enforcement. Interestingly, Fiore, who lacks a law degree, was appointed as a judge in Nye County in 2022.
Okay.
Yeah, we get it.
How the hell are you a judge when you don't even have a law degree? So here's what she did. There was a slain police officer. She raised $70,000 that she was allegedly going to give to the family to help them out. You want to know what she did with that money? She took it, put it in her pocket, spent some of it on plastic surgery, which, look, I don't like to shame people based on the way they look, but girl, I don't know who your plastic surgeon is, but you're not looking good. But, like, why did Trump pardon this chick? Like, what are you doing?
But he's, okay, I agree with you, actually. I hate this so much. I think it is a stain on his presidency overall, but I would also argue I hate this period I hate that Biden gave blanket pardons to his
Agreed.
family.
Yes,
I hate that he gave Fauci a pardon all the way back to 2014.
Adam Schiff.
How?
Agreed.
Probably
This is so corrupt and disgusting now.
Yes.
And all you have to do to break the law and get away with it is get close to whoever is sitting in the Oval. So then I get it. And you listed all the, I tried to figure this out. Like, why do we even have this? This seems insane. Correcting judicial errors, mercy and compassion, political reconciliation, executive check on judiciary. But none of that is what's happening here.
Right. Well, okay, so I don't know what happened to these investigations and this lawsuit, but there was a DOJ investigation that was launched 4 years ago because there was some evidence indicating that the Trump administration, through Rudy Giuliani specifically, was allegedly selling pardons. Okay, so Giuliani was allegedly facilitating it, and people were buying pardons.
$2 million, right?
Right, yes. So that was one of the stories. And then there was a woman who worked closely with Rudy Giuliani who filed a lawsuit against him. I believe that lawsuit is ongoing, and she also accused him of facilitating this, this scheme to buy pardons from the Trump administration. And that's really the only thing that can explain it to me, that and the fact that Trump likes to reward people who are loyal to him. But, I mean, you have to have some standards. And when you're talking about someone who raised charity money allegedly for an officer who was killed and then uses that money on her plastic surgery, it's gross, it's sick, and she should be held to account. That's insane.
I just don't get the optics on it though, right? Because it's
terrible.
like, okay, so what, political capital, he wants to stay in favor of people who are conservative leaning, like the Chrisleys, for example. They very proudly espouse their conservative values, right? But for me, I feel like it looks worse on Trump
but his
pardoning them
rationale is
without any, it's not as if they, illegally acquired evidence or anything like that would invalidate the investigation process or the trial. There's nothing like that. It's purely for the fact that they were espousing values that he likes.
President Trump is sending a message, and that's no MAGA left behind. That is the message he's sending, and that's very intentional on his part. Okay. But I don't think we can have this conversation without discussing the auto pen and the thousands of pardons that came down right before Biden left office. I am not feeling good about that at all. And the fact that the Hunter Biden pardon was for 10 years, extending back to 2014 and covered his Burisma years. How is that justifiable? How many of those thousands of people that Biden pardoned, how many of them was he aware of? I would wager to say maybe
his
1, 2, 3.
His family, the 5 family members.
James Biden, who was involved in a very duplicitous hospital scheme down here in Florida. It was extremely shady, and no one knows exactly what went down. He was pardoned. Valerie Biden Owens, who was part of every Biden scheme going across the decades. His entire family, essentially, other than Ashley and Jill. Why were they pardoned? If they didn't do anything wrong, what is he so afraid of?
Good point. I think that's a really good point. And you know what? I mean, this is what I mean when I say, if your preferred party is engaging in bad behavior and you defend them, you have to keep in mind your preferred party isn't going to be in power permanently. When the opposing political party is in charge, they're going to look at what the previous party or previous administration did. They're going to see the precedent, and they're going to engage in the same behavior, but in a context that you're not going to like. And so that's why it's important that we, the people, hold power to account, even if it's our preferred party engaging in that abuse of power. And the Biden administration did engage in that abuse of power.
And I can get behind that.
Yeah.
I can. Yeah. I do want to one quick thing.
Yeah.
There's something to be said about the fact that Trump didn't pardon himself after January 6th. He just didn't. He didn't pardon himself or his family. However, Biden did. He pardoned his family. He knew the precedent that he would be setting by pardoning himself, and he didn't take it. I think that's actually something to be applauded.
Yeah,
that's fair.
No, I do, and I'm very concerned about the Biden pardons because Biden could not tell you why he did it. If he did it, we will never know, probably. Maybe his family members, but outside of that, we'll never probably get an answer on that one. But I agree with you. I'm not going to sit here and say, yeah, well, I can see why I can't. I don't like these pardons. I don't like any of them, including maybe the Reality family. Now, there was some discussion, and maybe their sentencing was a little harsh. Now, that's a discussion worth having, but I don't like it, and I don't think anybody that's used it in recent history has done it in a way that I can defend, and I don't think we can defend it. And I think that we need to, moving forward, I think there should be more of a spotlight on it, and we should have more people from both parties that are willing to say, I don't get it.
Yeah.
And I don't get
agree.
it.
Yeah, and look, as a Californian, I've really grown to despise soft on crime BS.
Yeah.
This is soft on crime BS.
Oh, beyond.
Yeah.
I would argue it's worse, though. It's like, oh, I bought a ticket to $1 million dinner and now my son is pardoned. It's worse. And I am extremely disappointed because I did think Trump is such an enigma to me. It's like, on one hand, I thought Elon had bought him completely hook, line, and sinker, and then he's like, I don't give a crap, and I'm giving this to Sam Altman, and your EV mandates are gone, blah, blah, blah. But then it's like, oh, $1 million for a pardon?
But
you
listen,
get a pardon.
I don't think it's
you get a pardon.
You're right. It's not about money. It's about loyalty for him. It's not about money. It's not about money.
So corrupt.
This is not a kingdom.
How is there not already like
democracy.
limitations on it? Even the idea of a preemptive pardon to me, like, that is kind of crazy,
ridiculous.
a preemptive pardon, because that could kind of imply some complicity.
Without
And I
question.
know you're going to actually commit a crime, and so I'm protecting you before the fact. To me, that feels corrupt. I can see a few instances where maybe that's necessary, but
No way.
No,
That's not necessary.
Yeah, not even really.
A preemptive pardon?
Like
Come
for
on.
example, you could say, okay, well, when we switch power, I can see how the other side may weaponize this and try to use this legal loophole to get you, so I'm going to protect you. That's the only thing I can think of, right? But realistically, no, it feels corrupt, it feels wrong.
Yeah.
And why aren't there already some type of parameters around this in the first place?
I agree. I
Well,
totally agree.
hopefully more conversations like this one happen and people are more cognizant of the fact that they are being judged harshly for giving these pardons away or having them purchased.
At least they're getting less throughout the years, right? I mean, compared to
less
like
expensive, you're saying?
No, like compared to like Harry Truman and like Lyndon B. Johnson, like past presidents. They get
Well,
a
this
lot
is like
more.
the Newtonian law of motion. Like for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. I think
Yes.
like Trump feels so besieged by. Anna, I'm just loving you today.
I know what's going on. We're supposed to fight. We're supposed to duke it out.
I just feel like
there's got to be something in there. I'll find something to tease it out of you guys.
I'm bracing myself now. But anyway, Trump was besieged by 94 felony counts, right? 94 criminal charges. Yeah. That is, Democrats wanted so badly to take him down with creatures. Well, I shouldn't say creatures. I'm going to be nice. With people like Fani Willis and Letitia James, like all of them. They tried so hard to take him down through lawfare. I think he has every right to feel like the criminal justice is somehow predisposed against him.
No, baloney. He had these friggin' purchased. Don't even try to justify this. I refuse to allow it. You make a good point. They did try to crucify him, but he sold these friggin' pardons, and it's not okay. Oh, no.
Well, no, I'm just saying, in this regard, I actually don't think it's for money. I think it's the policy
loyalty.
It's loyalty.
You're not wrong. I still don't agree with it.
The people that went to the Capitol on January 6th, he deeply cares about them.
It doesn't matter. You're not allowed to have riots over BLM and rob a Target, and you are not allowed.
Well, those people were never really held to
Yeah, they go way more
I agree.
They go way more
right,
leniency
but
than the people in
I
the
feel
Capitol.
as though equal.
Right, but the people who
penalties
just
should be
strolled
applied.
into the Capitol on that day, maybe they shouldn't be in jail for 6 months. I'm just saying.
I would look. That's
much longer.
Yeah, we would have to go through the case by case.
It is
person
case
by
by case,
person.
yes.
With that said,
It's too
we
difficult to do that.
all are anti this one, it seems. And I'm gonna button it unless you guys have anything else to say.
No, sounds good. Let's
All right.
Button her up.
Okay, here we go. Operation Sam. I swear to God, you cannot make this one up. So, the Democratic Party is spending $20 million on a man problem. So, young men are fleeing the party in droves, and they're dropping $20 million to come up with Operation Sam, speaking with American men. I mean, they think that a left-wing Joe Rogan and wearing beards and swearing a lot is going to get it done. Take a look.
They're going to see it at the next ballot box. Yeah, and they did have a meeting Friday. It was called Come to Jesus
This is
meeting,
not
and
it, kiddo.
apparently
It's the one, it's the Jesse Waters clip where you have the Democrats literally swearing in swift succession. But we don't even need to find it. I can tell you basically what happens is they just are suddenly swearing like sailors. Pete Buttigieg is in a beard.
And a flannel shirt.
Yes.
Yeah,
I mean,
They
it's
always
like
go straight to
trying
the
to find a
flannels.
left-wing Joe Rogan.
The McKinsey consultant is really a man's
It is
man.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, Lindy, again, you would know this better than anyone else. So why don't you tell us what the hell is going on and how we got here?
You really can't make this shit up. These sorts of things, these boondoggles, that go right into the pockets of consultants, by the way. And it's the same group of people. They move from one campaign to the next. It doesn't matter if they win or lose, they're still going to cash that paycheck. And that's why they had like advertising down here in Ruby Red, Florida. It's because they don't care if the candidate wins. They're still going to make that dollar. And so they're spending $20 million on some sort of anthropological study of American men. Why don't they actually go out there and meet them?
Yeah, talk to them, get to know them, understand what their frustrations are.
For how many years?
Exactly.
I want to weigh in on that in a second, but they've already put out their initial findings because they've done like 30 focus groups. Oh, let me tell you. Let me tell you.
This is our third girl today. Anna is fired up.
It's so embarrassing because by releasing their initial findings, it's become abundantly clear that the Democratic Party is really, really out of touch with men. Like, they have no idea what the concerns of men have been, especially young men. So, for instance, one of their initial findings was like, oh, wow, it turns out that young men are economically frustrated. They don't see a path forward for themselves, and they really want to establish like a family. They don't feel that they can afford it. Can you believe that? That's how they're feeling. Yes, I can believe that. Yes, I can believe that. Of course, so many people in this country, young people, just want to experience the normal milestones that previous generations were able to experience, but it's become so incredibly difficult. The job market being what it is, I know the Biden administration was touting their low unemployment rate. However, what is the quality of those jobs? They're not good jobs. They're part-time jobs, construction jobs that are temporary, and it doesn't take into account the large swaths of young men who have given up on even looking for work, right? So that frustration exists. And then on top of that, to your point, Jillian, the messaging from the Democratic Party has basically just demonized men in general, as opposed to judging individuals who engage in bad behavior.
Right. That's absolutely right, Anna. And I also add, the Me Too movement has become this crazy hyena witch hunt that men are afraid. They're now afraid to hug us. They're afraid to call us like, I actually have no problem with being called sweetheart. Call me that all day long. I don't care. And they're so terrified of making a wrong move and suddenly being called out for sexual harassment. The Me Too movement is actually one of the worst things that have happened in the past 10 years.
You know what it is like Democrats, it seems like they really try to play on the emotions of people. They're not too good when it comes to logic and breaking down their policy. So they always go with these emotive issues that try to make people feel something. So they do the virtue signaling with the LGBT community, right? They do women's reproductive health with abortion. They do the fear of the end of democracy, which is ironic given the fact that they completely bypass their democratic process, right? But they lean on these emotional issues, and men are naturally more logical than women, so of course they're not going to jive with it. Am I surprised they're putting out this campaign? Absolutely not. Nat, could we actually play this really quickly? I just sent you something on Slack. Do you guys remember this campaign that Harris and Walz put out right coming up to the head of the election?
Oh, no.
This was what they put out to try to say, hey, man, we get you. I'm a man's man. Like, do you have that one there, Nat? Cool.
Oh, my God, I'm afraid. I'm scared.
Do you remember this thing?
Yes,
oh, no.
I do remember this.
God, I've not seen this.
I have secondhand embarrassment.
Stop.
I've had enough. Oh, is the volume not playing?
Man enough.
Yep.
Are you man enough to vote for a woman? Is that the
manipulation?
Exactly. And here, the ironic thing is they have them dressed like super masculine. Look at how one of these guys is sitting. It's like they were like, this is how men sit. It's like you have to be told, look.
Oh my
Except
God.
for those two little girls in The
so
Shining.
natural.
But I'm more afraid of just The Shining in general, the movie. It's not because they're girls. I think you get what I'm saying.
I'm man enough to support women. And I'm man enough to help them win.
Okay. Yeah, no wonder they need to spend some money to figure out how to talk to men. That is insane.
I was in the room when they first unveiled this ad, and this is the ad that they ran instead of responding to the transgender affirming surgery ad in Pennsylvania.
Wait, I have to ask you, what was everyone's face and reaction when they played it? Did they actually think that this was compelling?
Amazing. They literally thought it was their golden goose.
That really shows you how out of touch they are.
Here's why.
Go ahead, T.
It's because they don't talk to your everyday American. They don't go to the middle of the country.
They don't.
They don't want to spend time. And I've said this on Fox News repeatedly. I think the Democrat Party at large is bored with everyday people. I don't think that they find them interesting. I don't think that they find kitchen table issues interesting. I think they find it much more interesting to take a little boy and tell him he's a little girl and have him compete in the triple jump event. I think that they find that intriguing. They love the drag queens. They love to talk about the women's rights, and they love to talk about the Gaza and all, because that stuff excites them. But they are bored with the issues that everyday Americans need to think about and be cognizant of to survive.
That's
They're
precisely
bored with
right.
it.
They want to be seen as these heroes coming in and swooping down and saving these.
For 2% of people, though. But the rest of everybody, they're like, yeah, you're good. We want to, and they're also captivated by the activist class.
Right.
The activists have completely taken over the Democrat Party.
That's
They've convinced them that everybody cares about, wakes up every day and is like, I wonder how the trans are feeling today.
Right.
Well, the people running the show right now can tell you precisely who they are. And honestly, I hate to say it, but it's like people in my socioeconomic class. People who live in San Francisco and the Northeast.
That's the issue. They don't run in the same circles.
And
Live in
you
their
know,
ivory
let me
towers.
tell you where this decision was made. Do you know where it was made? It was in San Francisco Ritz-Carlton.
Oh,
That's
God.
where Sam was cultivated.
That's where the pulse of the working class is.
Exactly. And they were dining on these like extremely fancy hors d'oeuvres, sipping on champagne. That is how they germinated Sam speaking with American men. They have
it's
no
not
idea.
just the fact that they're not speaking to American men by prioritizing the issues that you were just mentioning, Tommy. It's the fact that these issues they're prioritizing, some of those things are creating the issues for men in the first place by emasculating them, by telling them that they should be ashamed of their masculinity and their maleness and they shouldn't be leaders in their household.
Okay, see.
They're creating the problem.
You hit the nail on the head in my household. I have a 13-year-old son sitting right over there, and it is like his greatest, happiest moment to get to meet PBD and shake his hand today.
Aww.
When you were 13, were you political?
Yeah, I was.
Okay, I wasn't. You were.
I'm not surprised,
Were you?
honestly.
I mean, I would say the
I
average
wasn't at all,
13-year-old
no.
is not political. And I have a 13-year-old that likes baseball, fishing, and politics. He likes PBD. He likes Joe Rogan. He can't wait to meet Charlie Kirk. And my friends' sons of the same age feel the same. And if you asked him why, it's not because he understands Russia, Ukraine. It's because these are the men that are authentically speaking to him, that he authentically identifies with, that he aspires to be like.
Right.
When not only are the Democrats not doing that, they're not identifying with them, they're not speaking to them authentically, they're denying all of their issues, they find them not only not interesting, but arguably repellent. And he picks it up unconsciously. And now I have a conservative living in my household that happens to have 4 gay moms and a black sister. So you tell me how that happened.
Yeah.
I don't mind it. I love it. I support him completely. I'm here to, indulge him in everything he is passionate about. Of course, obviously that are safe and healthy, which I think everything I listed is. But I didn't create this part of my son.
Right. You're right. I think you're right. And the other thing I'll say is, look, you mentioned PBD, and think about what the overall messaging is. Like, leave the politics out of it. Just talk about the charisma of the panel and everything, and even the merch that's being sold. Right. The future looks bright.
Right.
It's like pushing this idea that, have a little optimism. We believe in you. You see something, you want to work hard and get it, go get it. People want an inspiring message as opposed to being scolded all the time. And I think the
100%.
Democratic Party is thought of as the party of scolders, especially when it comes to men. And look, do I agree with Democrats when it comes to certain toxic things that exist, whether it be harassment of women in the workplace? Sure, I'm sure that exists. I'm sure it exists. However, the problem is when you just make a blanket statement about an entire group of people, it's unfair, it's politically stupid, and now Democrats are paying the consequences for that.
Yes. Amen. And they have an affinity group for every single demographic under the sun except white men. I happen to love white men. I think they're the shit.
Well, no, wait. No. Here's the deal.
Okay.
They love white men when the white men are competing against the girls in women's sports. Now, this is a topic that I'm really fired up about that I think needs to be discussed because my mind was blown this week when I saw in California, when I saw the state champion for women's track and field in 2 events stand on the podium, share the podium with what appeared to be a black, actually female athlete. So my mind was like warped here. I was like, wait a second here. The Democrat Party, the left, especially in California, has been telling us for at least the last 10 years that the group that they need to uphold the most are black women. And now they've got a white boy who has taken the first place spot from what appeared to be a black female athlete.
He's more marginalized.
And they don't see how sick that is. They're always down with the patriarchy. White men are awful. But if a white man says, I'm a woman, then all of a sudden they've now ascended themselves to the top of the ranking.
That's
and that's
precisely
why
right.
I argue liberalism is a disease and a mind virus, because you can't tell me for so many years that black women need to be uplifted, and now you've actively taken away a spot from a black woman to give to a white man, and that's the only white man you'll stand up for.
I'm not sure if it was that post or if it was from another post, but somebody pointed out this athlete, this male athlete, masquerading as a woman who won, is the only one there out of all the athletes with a full face of makeup. These women athletes go there to compete at a high level, whereas this man needs to signal, no, I actually deserve to be here by plastering on a thick clown face. Like, it looks ridiculous.
So funny.
It looks out of place, and I'm glad people are calling it out, but this is just insane that it's even still happening, given Trump's executive order.
Well, it doesn't take effect until
on.
June 9th. That's why, because they still have a few days to do their weird random shit. But I do want to say this is a hierarchy of grievance. And today, trans women are above black women in terms of who they should cater to and worship at the altar of. It's just frankly disgusting. And so they've been demonizing white men for basically 20, 30 years right now, and they expect them to come back into the fold. I don't think so.
Fair. All right. Moving on. Macron. The bitch slap heard around the world. So you've got cocaine conspiracy theories, which are supposedly debunked. But I think the bigger picture here, whether you love her or hate her, are Candace Owens' allegations about the Macrons. Now, of course, she says Brigitte Macron is a biological male, and who knows if that's true or not. But there's a lot she does say and uncover about this family, this couple, and their powerful connections that we should be aware of. And there's a weird reason that the world cannot stop speculating about these two. And in case you missed this, let's roll that clip one more time of her whacking him on the plane here. Any second now, he's gonna.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 2 hands in the face.
A little flip.
That is not it either.
Yeah,
All right,
we did not see the
Matt and I are O and O today. That's fine. No big deal.
It wasn't
Bottom
just a slap,
line
it
is
was
we all
going in.
saw it.
Yeah.
She smashes him in the face. So, Amy, why don't you take away some of the kind of behind the scenes stuff and what you think is going on, and let's just put on our tin hats here for a second. And I'll try to back you up with some of the stuff I did some fact checking on.
I mean, I don't proclaim to be an expert on their relationship or friends in general, but to me it kind of seems like a metaphor for just what is going on in that country with the riots, and just they have no control over what's going on right now. If I was to take a guess, I mean, we don't know what specifically caused that slap, but this narrative around Brigitte being a man, but even if you don't go all the way that far, the narrative that's now getting out about how she groomed him from when he was 15 years old.
That is pretty gross.
It's pretty creepy.
And arguably he was 14, by the way. Candace makes a pretty compelling argument that he was actually 14, and the reason this is significant is because that is in fact statutory rape. And it gives it like 1 more year for Brigitte to potentially be prosecuted. And she was supposedly 39, even though Candace makes the case she was early. It's beyond.
So they
it is a year older than my son.
That is just, it's insane. But the world is starting to pay attention. It has gone beyond the point where people are just drawing it up to a conspiracy theory. There's a lot of people that are taking this seriously. And if I have to guess, Brigitte Macron is like, hey, you're the president of this country. Why don't you shut this down? Couldn't you have done something? Why are so many people talking about us in this manner?
Think of it this way. If we had switched genders and it was the other way around and Brigitte was the one who was 14 or 15, people would be up in arms.
Oh, good point.
Right?
Yeah,
it would be totally unacceptable.
This is a little bit more nefarious, though, because it's the way this has been spun. So the woman responsible for that is this woman, Mimi Marchand, who happens to be like a complete scumbag. Now, she is like their political consigliere, and she's spun this entire thing of like look at this sexy woman, and this, what a romantic affair, and she's glamorized it. Well, that's kind of the point, right? So here's what's interesting now. This woman has been convicted or charged with forgery and bad checks, drug trafficking, a Sarzovsky Libyan financing scandal, extortion of Karine Le Marchand. She's got there's a sex tape scandal she's involved with. I mean, it really goes on and on. She's a very unsavory character. Now, here's what's even stranger. How did she get to the Macrons? Through this guy, Xavier Niel. So Xavier Niel is partners with Arnault's daughter. Now, Arnault is one of the, arguably on a day-to-day basis, one of the third richest men in the world. Okay, so this guy is also a super creepy character. So he puts Mimi in with the Macrons to like protect, groom, and cultivate this image, okay? So he is the son-in-law of the wealthiest man in the world. He's a prominent French tech billionaire and entrepreneur. He's cultivated a multifaceted relationship with Macron that intertwines personal connections and shared visions and innovation and strategic collaborations, blah, blah, blah. This guy's a scumbag, all right? In the earliest stages of his career, he was involved in the adult entertainment industry, notably through investments in Minitel Rose, France's pre-internet erotic chat services. And if you're like, so what, Jill? He had stakes in sex shops and peep shows. However, listen to this. He was indicted and detained on charges of aggravated procuring, which is pimping. The guy is a like porn freak, sex industry creep who was a pimp legitimately and charged for it. Okay, and he happens to be Arnault's son-in-law. And the very long story short here is Arnault knows Brigitte Macron because back in like 2007, she was somehow the teacher of his kids. What? So the girl, it's a filthy, dirty, weirdo circle, and I never do this. I even shut you down with the whole Satan thing. Okay? But the bottom line is this stuff does all check out. So the bigger question is, what kind of unsavory characters have arguably groomed Macron to become this Manchurian candidate? And he is, in fact, doing their bidding. That is the stuff that's scary here.
And just putting this into a geopolitical context and explaining to the world why we should care. We should care so much because now Macron is the face of the argument that we should be helping Ukraine.
Right.
He is one of the foremost spokesperson. So if his legitimacy is undermined, that's a very big deal.
That is exactly the bigger picture here. So if anyone doesn't have anything else to say, I would just put that out there so people know like the bigger picture around these two, because it's creepy and bizarre.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's creepy and bizarre. The slap to me looked like a disagreement, so I think that it's worth uncovering more.
Right.
I personally don't care that much about this couple. I am far more concerned when we talk about Jill and Joe Biden. I'd much rather like to get to the bottom of who was propping who up there, what was going on there. That's really where my interest lies. But I get that this is salacious, it's fun to talk about. But in terms of what the American people probably care too much about, I want to know who's running the auto pen. I want to know if Jill's
I can tell you exactly who,
guilty of elder abuse. That's kind of more in my wheelhouse.
You want to jump on that auto pen real quick?
Absolutely. It was a cabal of people. Let's name them. And let's name them and shame them and drag them before Congress. Steve Ricchetti, Mike Donnellan, Anita Dunn, Anthony Bernal, Jeff Zients, Ron Klain. And who knows, Jill Biden, Hunter Biden probably as well. But we would go to these donor meetings, and it wouldn't be Joe Biden who would be standing before us making the case. It would be Jill Biden. She loved the attention. She loved the glory. She loved having 24/7 access to Marine One, to Air Force One. She was living the life. She did 3 Vogue covers in 4 years. How many did Melania do? 0.
It is ridiculous because, I mean, I think about it in, I mean, how could you not? How could you not think about it in your own context and the people that you love in your life? I can't imagine doing that to my husband. Like to see him in that.
So much,
it's
though.
disgusting.
Yeah,
It's
it's
disgusting.
really her, though. The reason I struggle with that is you have so many different influences. Are we
but
really
that's his
letting
wife. That's his wife. That's her job to protect
Exactly.
him. That's his lifelong confidant and best friend, business partner, political confidant, everything.
Yeah.
Like if anyone, it should have been her.
But if your family doesn't protect you, who can you rely on?
Exactly, because the politicians have aligned interests. So of
Who
course
did
they're going to push their agenda. Your family should care about you first.
Exactly.
Your
So you're
health
saying
and
you're
well-being.
pissed because she allowed it, but I don't think she's the one guiding what gets signed by the pen.
It's not just the pen, but
I think it's a
why did
combination
he
of both.
decide to run for re-election? There was one person in the entire universe he called the love of my life, the life of my love, and that is Jill Biden. He wouldn't do anything without her sanction. He did everything because of her. He lost his first wife. Jill was all he had. You know, this is what he was living for. And he was living for Hunter Biden. He didn't want to see his only surviving son in prison. And that was one of his huge catalysts for running for re-election, to make sure that his son would be okay.
I go a lot more conspiracy theory on this one, just because I saw it called out a year prior by different conservatives. And what I think is like, oh, yeah, let's pretend like he's running. And then we'll have these debates months early, but with not enough time to do a primary. And then we'll have an open convention where we're automatically slotting Kamala, who we control like a little puppeteer. Like, I happen to think it was by design. There's no proof of that. But it just certainly played out that way, my God.
I completely agree, because especially when you look at his State of the Union, and he actually performed.
I'm pretty sure he was
anybody
with
up,
a stimulant can
but then why didn't they give it to him on the debate? It's like they intentionally did not give it to him.
It's because they saw the downfall was inevitable, and they had to find their off-ramp at that point. They were hoping the off-ramp would have been after the election that they thought they could have won by.
The midterms did too well. You know, they did too well during the midterms, and that perpetuated the Biden regime. You know what I mean?
Of course it was, but I think that they thought we can get him over the finish line. We'll put Trump in jail. We'll do whatever we can on our end. We'll get him across the finish line. Then we can anoint Kamala, because she can never win an election.
Exactly.
We'll get him across the finish line. Until it became obvious they could not get him across that finish line, they had to do something. They pulled the ripcord. They had him debate in June. Then they tossed him around across out in the wilderness, and then they're like, Kamala, that's our only option. We've DEI'd ourselves into this position. Let's see if we can make this work.
I agree with you.
I love that. I do want to
a little bit different, though.
As I'm sure it is. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say, like, I just think the Democratic Party has a problem in disagreeing within the party and holding each other accountable. What I mean by that is, once Biden said he was going to run for re-election, that was when the party should have, like, weighed in and said, no, bro, you're already a little up there in age.
But then you would have had a primary, though,
You would
Anna,
have had a
and
primary.
I'm suggesting they didn't want that.
But they didn't want to go against Biden. I think that's a huge issue. And the people surrounding Biden in the administration, they didn't want to end their White House jobs.
Absolutely not.
Donilon wanted that $4 million that he got paid from the campaign to run Biden for re-election. There's a financial interest, there's a power motive or power involved motive. And I think it's not really conspiratorial, it's about ego and it's about self-interest. And in the end, the people who got screwed were the Democratic voters.
And the American people, frankly. And that's precisely right. Let's look at the cast of characters here. These are uniquely Biden creatures who knew that they would not be hired, even under a different Democratic regime. They needed Biden specifically, right? And so they were riding this gravy train for as long as they possibly could. I do want to mention, though, this is something that's completely irrefutable. Everyone thought that Kamala Harris was deeply incompetent and stupid.
Yeah, but they controlled her, though, and I think they knew that. She would have done whatever they said to do. She'd read anything off a prompter. She'd sign whatever they told her to sign.
She couldn't even read off the prompter.
She's an empty vessel. That's why they wanted her, because they could literally make her reiterate anything they wanted.
Think about a primary, by the way. Think about a Democratic primary with Newsom. You destroyed California. Kamala, no, you destroyed California. There is no way they would have eviscerated each other in that primary.
That would have been great.
And they would have lost the election. I don't think the Democrats could have survived a primary. I really don't, which is why I have my whole
The reason why a primary
theory.
couldn't... the reason why they couldn't do that is because they were captured by their DEI base. And there was no way that black women who basically constitute the foundation of the Democratic Party would have allowed Kamala Harris to be shoved aside.
That's actually correct. And they were very vocal about that. It wasn't just about the base. The Congressional Black Caucus made it abundantly clear. James Clyburn's like, it's got to be Kamala. And if it's not Kamala, we're going to have an issue.
Exactly. Especially since they were moving South Carolina up in the primary calendar. So you know who forms the Democratic base in South Carolina? Black people.
Can I ask you a question? Always wondered with this. I'm surprised I haven't asked you yet.
Please.
You know how people were saying that the Obamas weren't supportive initially, but then they broadcasted that video where she was on the phone with them. Were they actually unhappy about it at first?
They were deeply unhappy, and Michelle Obama didn't want to get her hair and makeup done. That's why it was on video. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Wow.
Okay. And the whole thing was absolutely staged.
So glad I asked you that.
Yeah. She was basically begging for the endorsement, and she begged for Biden's endorsement the day of, too. That wasn't going to come. That's why there was a 30-minute delay.
Wow.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't have time for MAHA this week. Maybe next week. But I would simply say, I feel like I have to get this out there because I am so pissed about this. The report. This big, beautiful report. I want to make it clear that everything in the report simply requires you to default to common sense. And here is what it alleges. That the rise in ultra-processed food, the increase in a sedentary lifestyle, the over-medicalization of our health care, and toxins in our environment have created the problem where we are getting sicker and fatter and more infertile year after year after year. You're going to hear a lot about this report and all the mistakes that were in it because it was created by AI, which is absolutely...
Why?
Do we have 5 minutes to litigate this? Can I? I'm going to take 5. We're going to go a little bit over because here's the thing. Okay, so in fact, Nat, can you pull up the Guardian article for me? Here's what happened. They had AI apparently write this.
Oh my gosh.
And because of that, AI hallucinated certain studies it thought would exist. It literally predicts. I swear to God, it's insane. It screwed up citations, and it made a bit of a mess. It attributed wrong authors to wrong studies. And of course, big ag, big pharma, big food, all the Democratic senators like Senator Warren jumped in. We need to rescind this. This is bullshit. We told you. There's nothing to see here. They made up all of this stuff. And so for me personally, I'm super duper pissed that they made these mistakes because you've allowed the devil in the room to tell you, no. Drink glyphosate and eat fluoride tablets and chow down on your kid's red marker and don't worry about what's in your water. You do need to worry. The fact that they F this up, get it together, guys. Like, really get it together. You're not doing Kennedy a service, you're not doing Trump a service, and you're certainly not doing the American people a service. Whichever one of you guys put this report together, which, by the way, I sat in the room with the head of the EPA, the head of the USDA, the head of the FDA, the head of the NIH,
Check out her interview with
what happened here? I'm so
I hope someone's held accountable. I'm really scared about AI. Guys, I'm terrified about this AI situation.
Me too.
To your point that you just made, my roommate is a lawyer, right? She was using ChatGPT to do some legal research. Same thing, completely made up case law, completely made up precedents. I saw a video on X the other day. A woman in a doctor's patient office, he had his back turned, she's filming and zooming in over his shoulder on ChatGPT. Better get healthy now because your doctors, lawyers, and the most important institutions in this country and in the world are becoming so reliant on AI. We need to put something in place to hold a higher degree of accountability for our top institutions and the professions that glue the fabric of our society together.
I agree.
We're going to be effed in 10 years,
To your point, you know,
Yeah.
one of the biggest arguments against the big, beautiful bill, and even Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene has spoken out against it, there's a provision in there that would ban states from regulating AI for a decade.
Yes, Amy sent that to me, and we didn't have a chance to get to
it. It's a huge problem. And just bringing this back to why it matters, guys, it matters because Robert F. Kennedy is one of the most hated people right now in the Trump administration. And why are you handing them this? Why are you handing his opponents this ammunition to go after him when his message is so important? He is right on the substance, so let's get this stuff right because
that is the key that I simply want to communicate is that if you do not think that literally hundreds of thousands of chemicals in your air, in your water, in your food, in your beauty products, and your home cleaning products, or sitting in front of a screen all day long, or eating ultra-processed foods from genetically engineered crops that are soaked in these kinds of chemicals and, you know, designed to make you not eat just one. All of the things in this report, use your common sense because you are going to have to take self-agency here. Period. End of story. We are sicker than ever. We are bigger than ever. And they effed up the report, and I am friggin' pissed about it. But you got to use your common sense because the points that the report makes are spot on. And I have been doing that line of work for 30 years, and I've written numerous books. And I promise you, my research is rock solid, and it backs up those 4 pillars in the report.
Jillian, in terms of sabotage, that someone did that intentionally to then invalidate the findings inside of the report.
I think corporate interests, I really do think corporate interests rule this country.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, at the end of the day,
it's a cash cow.
They're buying our politicians. I would not be surprised if there was some, you know, squirrely business going on.
Some sabotage.
Not only that, how many of them are still Biden loyalists? You know, how many people are in HHS?
Nobody.
I mean, like Democratic people who are trying to stab RFK Jr. in the back. Like, I still don't trust that everyone at HHS has their leader's interests at heart.
I don't know, maybe not, but I'm proofread the friggin' reports that you
Insane.
put out. Honest to God. All right, that's all for this week. Amy, where can we find you?
You guys can find me on Manect and on my channel. I host a show called Dangerous Conversations.
Lindy.
I'm on Manect as well. I'm Lindy Li on X.
I'm Tomi. You can find me on Outkick.com Monday through Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern, also on Fox News, and on social media at Tomi Lahren.
You can find me on Manect. You can also find me over at The Young Turks, youtube.com/The Young Turks, and on Substack. That's Kasparian.substack.com.
Beautiful. Like I said, always, I'm just going to be here. So just tune in for me here. That's what we want. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment, do all the things. It helps us out a ton. We'll talk to you guys next week.